Good morning, Mr. Thomas.
Hi, Kaven.
How are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you.
I'm Kaven with Weedex.
Kaven. Nice
I'm here to do your lawn analysis today, so we can kind of go over what we have on the lawn, expectations, and then obviously how we can progress through the rest of the season here. Do you have any areas that you'd like to go over, or any areas of concern?
Yeah, particularly out here up front.
Okay.
You know, we had a nice, healthy lawn at one time, but we had a freeze a few years ago, and it really took effect on the lawn. So I haven't been able to fully recover.
Okay.
But yeah, if you have any kind of solutions for us, man,
Sure. Absolutely. Now with the St. Augustine grass, it is more of a tropical grass, so it necessarily doesn't like to go into dormancy. So when we get those hard freezes, it's going into weather that it's not normally used to. So if there's any type of weakness going into dormancy and we get those freezes, sometimes you can get some die off like we've had in some of these areas.
Yes.
Now, it's not impossible to get those areas to recover, but with the density of the shade that you have, it's going to be hard to get new sod established. So I would definitely recommend in these areas where you do have the bare spots is you would want to start with maybe an overseed with fescue grass. This is going to be the most shade tolerant grass that's going to be able to survive in the areas that you have shade. So at least we'll be able to have some ground cover. By having that ground cover, it's also going to allow us to retain that moisture because we're going to be able to keep that soil covered with that grass. Now, as we progress throughout the season and we can start to get some of these areas of St. Augustine to fill in, it will eventually take over those areas that have that fescue.
Okay.
Now, it's hard to say a timeline of when that recovery would happen, but as time goes on, with all of the things that we can do and that we communicate back and forth with each other, we can get these areas to slowly recover and then take back over those areas that have fescue.
Perfect.
In these areas right here, obviously these are going to be the main spots that you're wanting to do that overseed. You want to be fairly generous with that seed to make sure that you can get the most amount of germination possible so that we can have areas that fill in as completely as possible. After an overseed is done, you would definitely want to top dress these areas as well with a good compost. It's going to do two things. It's going to improve the soil quality so you can get more growth overall. It's also going to help keep that seed in place so that you can get that to germinate so it doesn't just wash away whenever we get a heavy rain or just through the regular watering. Now with the weeds that are on the lawn right now, generally, when we're first starting treatments, we like to try to put a pre-emergent down, but with the St. Augustine grass and the damage that you have, we want to make sure that we're as gentle as possible.
Okay.
So that pre-emergent, it prevents root growth in weeds, but also new grass. So that's one of the reasons why we want to make sure we keep that off of there, because with the recovery that we want and to get that seed to germinate, we want to just facilitate that. Okay. So it will be just spot treating for the weeds so we can get those under control slowly over time and then getting all of that new grass established. So we'll be able to start putting those fertilizers on there as well.
Good.
So that's going to be the first thing that we'll start with. And generally, it takes 3 to 4 treatments to get those weeds under control on a more consistent basis. So it is one of those things that takes a little bit of time, but it's definitely something that we can get under control. Now, obviously, there's not a ton of weeds. Most of those are going to be in your bare areas. Those areas are always more susceptible to getting those weeds. With the St. Augustine grass, as thick as it does have the ability to choke a lot of that out. So that's why in the areas where you have good thick density, you don't have as many weeds. Correct. Now with the yard over here and over here, I know you've had some construction previously. Do you know areas that they're going to replace with grass or areas that you guys are going to be held accountable for?
Well, the city is going to replace the grass out on the easeway.
Okay, on the front side here?
Yeah, on the front side, yeah. But I'm responsible, of course, over here. We had St. Augustine over there at one time too, and it died off as well.
Okay, yeah. And with that area right there, what we're going to have to do, we'll get those weeds under control, so we'll definitely spot treat those first. After we get that spot treated, then we can come back after those weeds have died, and then we can do that overseed. Because it's going to be a lot easier to get that germinated and get that a lot fuller once we get those weeds under control a little bit better. As time goes on, there are some other things that we can do to facilitate more of that growth, like doing additional treatments as a soil builder treatments. These will improve your actual soil quality as well so that you can get better overall growth. It's going to make for a deeper, thicker root system. And obviously the more root system you have, the better ability you have for overall growth as well. It will also help retain more of that moisture.
Okay.
So it's going to be able to do multiple things to facilitate growth and the absorption of that water. Do you have an in-ground watering system?
I do not.
You do not.
I do
Okay.
not.
Okay. So that's still easy to work with as long as you have the patience to be able to water properly. Okay. Okay. Well, that's perfect. So as long as the watering and the mowing is done correctly, I don't see any reason why we can't get these areas to recover as time goes on.
Okay.
With the bare areas that you do have, the way this St. Augustine grows is it grows with a stolon. So basically, any of these little vine-looking things that come out, as they start to stretch out, and you can already see on here, you do have a root system on each one of these nodes. You want to make sure that if we're getting that, try to get that recovery, that you don't mow directly over any of these areas that have that damage. Because what's going to happen is as that starts to grow and start to recover, and if that root system doesn't get established, all you're doing is cutting off that new growth right off the bat so it doesn't ever get a chance to fully recover, or it just slows down that progress. So in any of these areas where you've got that damage, as we start to get in the growing season, you'll probably want to stay off of those with a mower for up to a month at a time. Now, the good thing about St. Augustine grass is it doesn't really grow past about 6 inches tall. So you're not going to have to worry about, knee length height or anything. Now, if you do want to try to even those areas out, you can always use a weed eater, because with the mower, it does create enough vacuum that it will pull that up. The weed eater doesn't have that same vacuum, so you can knock that down and even those areas out if you want to make that look a little bit more congruent with the rest of the lawn. The broadleaf weeds, like I was talking about, those are going to be the ones that we'll be able to get rid of as quickly as possible. Things like this right here, which would be field madder, things like clover. You've also got some henbit, dandelions, things like that. Those will be fairly easy for us to get under control quickly. The grassy weeds, they're going to blend in pretty well with the overseed that we're doing, but those are going to be the ones that hang around the longest. Now, once they're established, it's really hard for us to kill those, but we have the benefit of the warm season being able to kill those off, because those are purely a cold season weed. We'll be able to wait for that to die off, and that usually happens right around May, so you can mow those once a week or so, and you'll be able to keep those under control so they don't look bad against everything else. All right. I would say once we do get into the growing season, once a week, about every 7 days is the time frame that you'll want to be doing that mowing process. Anything less than that, you're actually causing damage to that lawn. So you want to make sure that you're taking off about 1/3 of that leaf blade or less each time that you mow. So mowing more frequently will actually create more growth overall.
Okay.
Okay. Anything in the backyard that you've got some issues with?
Certainly, I have some things I'd like to address back there.
Okay, perfect. Well, we can go ahead and take a look and show me the way.
Sure.
Unless you plan on creating more of a flower bed in this particular area, that's always an option as well. So hardscaping with a river rock, crushed granite, something like that. If you want to just eliminate this area altogether out of the lawn so you don't have to worry about it ever again, that's always an option for some of these areas, especially on the corner where you've got a lot of shade. Alleyways are always the worst because you're getting a lot of traffic, your trash man, they're probably driving over these areas.
Exactly.
So a corner portion like this right here, it would be really beneficial to do a hardscaping.
That's great.
And at least it's a one-time investment, and then you don't have to worry about it. If you do have the rocks in these areas, we're still able to spot treat and keep those weeds under control as well.
Good idea. Thanks.
Yeah.
So these trees are a blessing, but they can be labor intense, man. I mean,
absolutely. And you've done a great job trimming so far. How often are you guys trimming right now?
The trees?
Yeah, trimming the trees.
Once every 2 years, maybe?
That's probably about right. I mean, it does become a point where you can trim off too much, and now you don't have enough foliage for that tree to grow properly. So I think you've done enough right now, I would say about every other year or so, just to get any of those new growth pieces off. That's about all you'd really have to do. I think that you've trimmed the perfect amount off to get as much growth that you can.
There's some suckers that need to be cut off right now, but
yeah, but I mean, that's all that I would probably address.
So the backyard, this area for the most part is full with St. Augustine.
Right.
There's a little sinkhole in the center, right there.
Yeah.
I've added and I just can't seem to get it.
Now, did you have a tree there previously?
No.
No trees or anything?
No trees.
Okay.
It's
And that's just one of those things that just takes a little bit of time. I mean, you know, you've got two options. You can about every month or two, when we're in the growing season, add about a ½ inch at a time, building that up slowly over time. Or the other option, which most people don't want to do, is pulling up that sod, putting all new soil down, leveling it, and then putting new sod down on top of that. I know most people would rather not invest more time and more money in putting the new sod down. So a lot of people will go with that second option of just adding that soil about a ½ inch at a time, once a month or once every month and a half, somewhere around there. As that soil works back down and you can see that grass coming through really well again, then you can add a little bit more soil. And that's usually what most people do. Once you are able to do that, so another thing about St. Augustine grass is it's very susceptible to getting fungus. So spring and fall, as those temperatures are around 50 degrees or below, we get a lot of excess water through, you know, just rain and everything else.
right.
If you get that pooling in those areas with those cooler nighttime temperatures, that's what develops that fungus.
Okay.
So to try to eliminate that, obviously we can build that slowly up over time so you don't have that pooling of the water in those areas.
Okay.
Also, another thing that's very good for St. Augustine is peat moss. You can get that in big bales at like Lowe's or Home Depot. All you have to do with some of that stuff, if you do have a little bit of damage or even in some of those thin spots about once a month, you can add some of that peat moss. And what that's doing is it's regulating the pH of the soil to actually make it a little bit higher so that it can, or more acidic, so that it can actually get better overall growth. With a lot of the fungus that we see in the spring, which would be take-all root rot, that usually shows in a very like lime green, tennis ball green color. That is the best thing you can do for that type of fungus. It will help regulate the pH of that soil so that it recovers a lot quicker. And these are all things that we can put in your after service email. So when we come out and we do our treatments, we're going to, you know, tell you what weeds you've got on the lawn, any of those problems, and everything that we tell you in person is always going to be backed up in that email. So you always have something that's recorded. Okay. So if you ever forget anything, you know, or you don't want to pay attention to us, you've got that backup in that email. So any of those suggestions, we'll make sure that we put in there for you guys.
Great.
All right.
All right. So as you can see, during the winter, I took the liberty of throwing some ryegrass out. I just wanted to be able to enjoy the backyard, some foliage back here in the backyard.
Exactly.
And during the wintertime, we came out in the evenings, but it didn't take as well as it had before. Maybe I just didn't put enough down. But again, another tree.
Yeah, another
right?
tree.
Another
yes,
tree.
sir. Yes, sir.
So of course, this area around the backside, this area right here, for the most part, does pretty well. This little mound. So again, back here, it looks like you can see the winter rye, and this area is just starting to actually grow. Exactly.
And it's probably because multiple things. We're getting warm enough that you're getting that germination again. When you're doing it in the fall, we usually tell people to put it down right around October. The soil temperatures are going to be just right to get that new seed germinated. So that's why, as of right now, this is going to be the perfect timing to do another overseed, because those soil temperatures are warm enough to get that to germinate. If we get below 50 degrees or 40 degrees, that's when that germination stops, and whatever you've got growing is just going to be what you have for that time frame. Now, in these areas right here, you've also got some low spots, so some of that could have washed out a little bit, or if you've got some pooling, it could also suffocate some of that seed from actually getting to grow. So in some of these areas where you've got very low spots, this might be something you might think about doing a hardscape as well. So doing river rock or something like that, creating an actual bed right around the edge right there. It's going to be very difficult to grow grass in that spot because you have nowhere for that water to go. Now, if you had a French drain or something to get it out from underneath that fence line, you'd probably have a better option, but I think the hardscaping is going to be the cheaper route than putting in a French drain in this area. So this might be another spot right here where you could even go right across, maybe about a foot out from your mondo grass right here, and then just take that all the way around to that edge. And at least it looks really good as well. And then it's another one of those areas just like that little corner there that you just wouldn't have to worry about ever again. Decent?
Yeah, very nice. Okay. I mean, I didn't expect this to be as educational as it was.
Absolutely. Right? Well, that's one of the things, right? I mean, if this was part of your living and this is what you did as an occupation, obviously you'd have a lot more knowledge on that. Some people maybe didn't grow up in this area, so you wouldn't understand.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
exactly,
Yes,
exactly. And we understand, you know, you've got your own life to live. You've got a job. You've got kids. You know, everybody has their own lives to live. So you may not have the time to invest to learn all of those sorts of things.
But I still want a green lawn.
And we can provide that for you. But that's what we're here for. So, you know, not only do we want to make sure that we're letting you know what's going on the lawn, it's also the opportunity for us to educate you guys, because the more you know as well, the better the lawn can look long term. Sure. And then if you do have problems, now you're able to start recognizing that, because we can show you how to look at those things. Because even with our treatments, we're only out about every 4 to 6 weeks. A lot can happen in that 4 to 6 week time frame. So if you're able to identify some of those issues before we're able to get out here, then we can come out faster to get those issues resolved.
Gotcha.
So anytime you notice anything out of the ordinary, give us a call, because we can come right out, diagnose that. Faster we can get out to diagnose it, the faster we can get that to recover.
Perfect. So we kind of river rock this area out. This is temporary right here, this turf.
Okay.
What the problem we have here is oak trees, right?
The saplings.
Good Lord.
Right.
I mean, it just, you know, it's kind of dormant now. But
once we get in the growing season,
yes, sir. I mean,
absolutely.
I've got to get in here with a weed eater, you know, pretty much all the time to kill this stuff. I mean,
there's not a lot we can do with the actual little suckers. So if it was just something that was coming up from a seed, we can usually get those under control. But I can even tell already with the density of the areas where you're having this come up, this is coming up from the root system itself.
True, yeah.
And now if we were to apply something to that area, we have the chance of that being absorbed by the tree. Now we have a problem with possibly killing the tree, right? Obviously, with as beautiful as these trees are, you want to keep those as long as possible. Now we can spot treat for the weeds in these areas, but we wouldn't be able to really make any headway on those tree saplings. That's one of those catch-22s, you know. It's one of those, if you want your tree, there's not much we can do about it. But if you're already maintaining your lawn, you know, you can, like you said, you can just continue to, you know, use your weed whacker in those areas and try to keep those down as best as possible.
I supported the intense labor I was talking about with these trees. Now, it doesn't, there's just a few on this tree out front on the right side.
Right.
There's just a few of them periodically.
Now, those are going to be coming from the seeds themselves.
Acorns?
So, right. So those are going to just be, and no telling how long they've been there. You know, some of those seeds can be viable for 20 to 50 years or so. So depending on how much of those are under the soil, they can still come up, but we can treat those as time goes on. A lot of our technicians will just pull those as they go through the lawn just to try to keep those under control a little bit better. The best thing you can do is, you know, if you're starting to see a lot of those acorns on the lawn, try to remove those as best as possible. As best as possible. It's not perfect, but sometimes those seeds have been known to be very acidic as well. So those can also cause issues with growth. So if you have a lot of those acorns on the lawn, most of the time you're also seeing limited growth because of the acidity of those acorns. Yeah. Like I was saying earlier, there's 4 to 6 weeks in between each treatment. If you do notice anything out of the ordinary or anything that concerns you, give us a call so we can come back out and take another look. Generally, with getting the weeds under control, give us at least 2 treatments. Okay. After those 2 treatments, if you're still seeing a prevalency of weeds, give us a call. We can come back out and we can start doing those weed service calls for you. Okay. Just to get those under control a little bit quicker, going in a little bit more of a frequency every 2 to 3 weeks or so, we can get those dialed down a lot quicker. But you should notice a majority of these weeds after today's treatment dying within the next week, week and a half. So we'll be able to make some pretty good headway right away. I wouldn't probably worry about starting that mowing process for maybe even another 3 weeks to a month until we get that. So you've got some time. You can save your energy for now. We will make sure, however you're signed up, whether it's a call, an email, a text ahead, you're always going to get that notification the day before. If you need us to give you a 30-minute call ahead, an hour call ahead, we can always make those arrangements and put those onto your account, so that way you can make those arrangements to either be here Now, you don't have to be here for all of those treatments. Okay. So if you aren't here, nobody's home to talk to, we're going to call you after that treatment just to let you know what we've done and if we're having any issues on the lawn.
Perfect.
All right, so we will give you your lawn analysis. After I'm done with the treatment, you will get that email. So that's going to go over everything that we've already covered. And anything else that we can do to facilitate this lawn, we'd be happy to do it for you.
I'm excited. Can't wait.
Perfect.
Thanks for coming by.
You bet. You have a great day. Thank you.